On behalf of the Gasconade County Historical Society, I do want to welcome everybody here today. We want to make sure we thank all of our sponsors and everyone that supports us. We really do appreciate that. Today's program is Digging Our Dirt. We have Chris Heimsoff and Mike Kisling here. They have real day jobs, but the fun job is metal detecting. So we'll let them tell you all about it.
I'm Chris Heimsoff from around Cole Camp, Sedalia area. This is Mike Kisling. We've been detecting together as friends for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or so. And we've kind of just got it down to just the two of us because we both kind of have the same passion about history. We're not in it for profit. We don't sell anything that we find. We're just more about preserving that history. And anyway, it just turned out it was kind of a good fit for detecting together. So, and I usually drive and he buys dinner. So that works out good too. But as long as his girlfriend and my girlfriend are cool with it, everything works out. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about detecting, a little bit of the history of it, and then Mike will go into some another branch of what we're doing. So first, thank you very much for letting us come. We really enjoy doing this. It's a lot of fun. So for us, I don't know anyway. But if you got
no other social life, so
yeah,
it's
the
highlight of our calendar.
Yeah. If you have any questions, we'll take questions afterwards. What we thought we'd do is give our presentation, then questions, talk. We've got some display cases over here of finds that we've made in the past you can look at. And then there's a little box over there and some note cards. And if you're interested in us coming to your place, or if you think you have an idea of something that might help us in our research, if you put your name and phone number on that little note card or email or something and drop it in that little box with a fish on the front of it, because we're going fishing, just drop it in there and then we'll figure out, we'll get a hold of you at some point in time. So, here we go. What are you doing here? Oh, we got an heckler in the back. I'm glad you're here. All right. I'm going to sit down and do this so I can kind of read through some of this if it's all right with you. But like I said, Mike and I, we both have a passion for detecting and fighting yellow jackets and snakes and that sort of thing. I'm going to start off with the origin of metal detecting. Can everybody see this okay? Can you see it all right? This is, these are 4 individuals. Metal detecting had its origin in these 4 individuals in the year 1881. This is President James Garfield. This is his doctor who killed him. This doctor's name is Doctor. His parents named him Doctor to try to influence his career choices in the future. So this is Dr. Bliss, the man that killed President Garfield. This is James Guiteau, or Charles Guiteau, the man who shot and killed President Garfield. The Charles Guiteau said, yes, I shot the president, but his doctor killed him. He was a crazy man, but he kind of knew what was going on. And this is Alexander Graham Bell as he would have looked around this time that all of this was going on. On July 2nd, 1881, Charles Guiteau shot Garfield in the Boston and Philadelphia train station in Washington, D.C. Shot him in the back. He had felt slighted by the president because he repeatedly sent letters and he'd been asking for a position as an ambassador to France, and the president didn't give it to him. And Guiteau was mentally ill, his letters went unanswered, and he decided that God told him that he needed to kill the president. He fully expected to be caught. He purchased a short-barreled British Bulldog revolver to do the job because he thought it would display well in an exhibit on the president's assassination. Dr. Bliss here, he had a bad case of hubris. He was confident that he could save the president's life if he could simply remove the bullet. So Bliss and 11 other doctors prodded and probed Garfield's wounds, searching for that bullet. And in this day and time, all the educated doctors knew that hand washing was a waste of time because they were gentlemen and gentlemen's hands were always clean. As strange as that sounds, that was the thinking of the day among them. Alexander Graham Bell offered his services with a device that he developed, which he had proven to be able to locate bullets and metal fragments in Civil War soldiers. But Bliss declined that offer until September, whenever the president was starting to fail pretty fast. Bliss publicly stated that the bullet was on the president's right side, so that's the only place that he would allow Bell to metal detect. So Dr. Bliss did not want to be proven wrong. So here's Bell and his assistant, and they're checking for the where the bullet is. Trouble was, the president was laying on a newfangled mattress that had bed springs in it. And so he was picking up the signals from the bed springs. And he knew that there was a strange background hum, and he said, I don't think my machine's working right, I'm getting this background hum. But Dr. Bliss said, no, that's the bullet. The bullet's on his right side, and that's what you're hearing. Well, Garfield dies. He shot on July 2nd. He dies on September 19th of 1881. He suffered terribly. There's a great biography on Netflix right now, I think, about Garfield. It's pretty interesting if you want to watch. But after this horrible affair, antiseptic kind of became more acceptable in the medical community, and hand washing was coming around to be a thing that doctors should do. That's the true tale of the first metal detector. That induction balance machine is what Alexander Graham Bell called it, and that's what he used on President Garfield. So a little bit about how, why, when, and where we detect. I photoshopped our stomachs to look a little bit smaller on that. That is us.
You didn't do it.
So you see the gear we use, a metal detector, knee pads to try to save our knees. This is called a pinpointer. It's a little handheld detector, so whenever you dig the item out of the ground, you can use that to try to pinpoint where it is. A little shovel. We carry a larger shovel with us as well. We also use a GPS device on the larger sites, or the sites that are more important if we're not just doing a yard or something. If we're doing a Civil War site, we'll GPS all of our finds, and this is a site south of here quite a ways. It's in another county, but these are all color-coded dots showing dropped bullets and fired bullets all in this bluff along this creek, and brass items, and there were more dropped bullets up here, so they had apparently been standing out here and firing into this bluff. We GPS all these marks, we save them. We put together, for this landowner, we put together a display showing where all these bullets were from. There's a large selection of the bullets. We generally try to put together a display and share our finds with the landowners. We do like to keep some of our finds as well, because we've invested a lot of money and a lot of time in this. Like I said, we don't sell them, we're in it for the history, but we also enjoy just being able to bring them around and share them to a lot of other people, show them what was in the ground, what there is. We also, especially, I mean, if we find something that, well, I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, it's pretty interesting. And sometimes landowners are interested in this and they want it. Other times there's a place down south we detect down around Rolla, and that individual was a machine gunner in Korea. And he said, you can take all those bullets off my farm that you want. I don't care to have any of them out here. He said, I don't care to ever see a bullet. And that was just because of what he'd experienced. This is a display we did. We actually did 2 of these big displays for St. Joseph's and Heisinger Bluffs Nursing Home in Jefferson City. That was the site of what was called College Hill Fort, which is no longer there. And I'll get to some of that in a minute too. This is a small little display over around the Osage River Bridge on the Osage County, used to be Gasconade County side. Or I guess Osage County was Gasconade County at one time, correct? All the way over to the bridge. This is from the east side of the bridge where there was a skirmish. And we found a few bullets out there, and that's what we gave the landowner. And he came out with us and he got to dig some. We found some and let him dig it, so that was kind of neat. Another reason we do it so is for history. This is growing up in rural Missouri. Don Waldecker, I'm sure a lot of you know him. This little book is really interesting if you haven't read it. And it's not showing all up on the screen, but my favorite part about this book is Katerina Peter's diary. It was his great-grandmother, and she came over from Germany. And here I believe it says 1859. I found on the Immigrant Ship Transcribers Guild that it shows her in 1857. His great-grandmother remembered it as being she was 16. This girl is shown as being 14. So it's 2 years difference on both sides. So I just talked to him yesterday. I'll be sending him all this information, and he was interested in that. And she came over with someone else also, Mina Peters, age 17. And he said, well, she grew up. She lived with her sister. And he said, but I thought she came over by herself. And I said, well, according to this, they came over together, passenger 110 and passenger 111. The research is as much fun as going out and digging and finding things. But I thought how neat it would be to metal detect the Waldecker home place. And I understand he told me right after he took this picture that came down. They took it down. Someone took it down piece by piece and rebuilt it somewhere else, so that was safe. Anyway, to detect around there and find something maybe from Germany that she may have brought over, so I'd like to send it to him. He lives in Texas, so we may try to do that. So history lost. Is it Emil or Emil lime killer? Is anyone? Emil? Okay, mine had a cousin Emil, but I don't know if people call it Emil. I don't know how many of you know about this story. These photos are from an article titled Titan, Rescued from a Watery Grave. It was featured in the January 19 issue of Gas Engine magazine. The caption here reads, Emil lime cooler, Mount Sterling, brushes some of the sediment off a 1915 Titan tractor recovered from an abandoned TIF mine. Story by Ray Twillman. I've included this here because Mr. Limekiller's story is similar to ours. He heard a rumor about a tractor at the bottom of a mine. He tried to locate it. He failed. He was about to give up. On a whim, he stopped at an elderly gentleman's house to ask if he'd ever heard of it. And it turned out he just happened to stop at the home of the tractor's original owner. And it turned out he knew right where it was. Mr. Limekiller got permission. They brought in a crane from Twee House and some scuba divers, and they actually found it. It took them a while, but they found it in the bottom of that mine, hauled it out, and he restored it. I think that's pretty interesting. Does anybody know where that tractor is today? I just think that's pretty neat, though. That were all of you familiar with this? I know some of you probably knew about this. I thought it was pretty neat. Anyway, this is a U.S. Cavalry horse pit. A friend of mine is sitting in the back of the room right now. Oh, you brought it! That's awesome! You know, Ronnie Weber and your wife, girlfriend, which one was it?
I'm right up Highway W, and I'm sure everybody's curious because I'm the only house with the red roof that I've been remodeling for the last 10 years or better, but any house at that point. And Pam is a horse person from her deceased husband, and she was in the backyard where the old barn was, and she kicked this out of the ground. And on both sides, it's got U.S. on here. So anyhow, I'm sure that's cavalry. I don't know who else would have it. But.
And Civil War, I think. I mean, from looking at it, I think it's Civil War. And he told me this while I was working at the Missouri State Fair, and his daughter works there, and he told me this story, and I was like, can I please come out and metal detect around? Oh, you brought that. The only thing I found.
And then I got this reed. I'm going to say it was roughly 50 yards from where Chris found this reed on the property, from where Pam found that horse pit. So, and Chris assumed this is very old. It's a reed out of a harmonica.
It's a zinc, and it's zinc, I believe, right?
I thought that's what you said.
Yeah, it's not brass, so it's a much older. It's a zinc reed, so we think that. And was it, Ronnie, when was your house built?
Well, and then that's the other thing. When I've been working on it, as a lot of you know, a lady came by one time and she was at the mailbox sticking some papers in there, which normally people ain't supposed to do, but that's beside the point. So we stopped and talked to her, and she came up to the house, and her mom was born and raised in this little house, and her ancestors, which is, we say cuck, and in New Haven, Washington say coke. And anyhow, the people, I can't remember the first name, but they're buried out here at, what is the church on the hill over here, in the cemetery back there. And we found their graves back there. Anyhow, they had the property from 1843, and I have a copy of the original land grant. And the President of the United States then was John Tyler.
Yeah.
So,
We're only here for a little bitty short amount of time, and to hear these little things from that, I think that stuff is fascinating. So how did that get there in that garden spot? How did that breed get there? Are there more soldiers around? Are there more items around somewhere? Is there a camp nearby? Or was someone just passing through and left this bit? Or did someone, Coke, or however you say the name, did they find it and just bring it home? You'll never know, probably. But I walked around Ronnie's property quite a bit hoping to find a campsite that maybe would tell me, oh, that's why this is here. But I didn't find anything. But might have to go back and try again. And it's been a couple years. I'm a little bit older and slower. And maybe we'll move a little bit slower, more careful. Thank you for bringing that. I just told him that we were going to be here, and I didn't want to bug him about bringing anything, but I'm glad you did. Thank you.
I'm trying to be very polite about it too.
You are so much. It's just.
Dale?
Yeah, well, Ronnie, I showed Mike this earlier. This is from 2 miles away.
Okay. Yeah, right. As a crow flies.
Yes, this is from Uncle found it in the branch in the dairy pasture.
In the creek.
Yes, just washing out. It's brass.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Union or Confederate. You might have an insight on that.
It looks like a Union. Looks like a Union.
I don't know how to tell the difference.
Wow.
I'm seeing the connection here.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I don't know if you're both aware of the history of Christ when he came through Bay and everything. And there was quite a
Well, and we'd like to know more about, like, especially local stories about that sort of thing. That is what just interests us so much. Like your shirt, that's what I was wearing a while ago. Oh, I changed into it. I'm wearing a Missouri Civil War Museum t-shirt.
And I had the cap on before I walked in.
And you know, this area is not that far from Troutwine's Mill, which supposedly was also another encampment over in the First Creek area. I mean, how far is that from here as the crow flies? I don't know if you've done any digging over there.
Basically over the hill, it starts, First Creek starts up there, Grant Creek's cattle lot, pretty much.
Right, and
That's
it was,
the end of First Creek.
my understanding it's the area kind of where Troutwine's Mill was where Highway 100 goes off to Gasconade and then Jay cuts off. It was somewhere in that area.
Kind of where File Store is.
Generally, yeah, probably a little closer in.
Well, that would be something we'd really be interested in. In fact, don't let one of us forget to pull up. Can you write down? What was the name of the mill?
Troutwine, Trautwein.
W-E-I-N. Trout. W-E-I-N. German fish. That's interesting. This is the sort of thing that. Anyway, we'll go on with this and then maybe we'll talk some more. But thank you again, you guys, for bringing those in. And just to hold them and know that somebody was holding that regularly, putting it on, taking it off. Someone, I just think that's neat. This building. Not only do we detect to keep up our six-pack abs and manly physique, but to save this history. But so much is lost or destroyed or decayed or deteriorates. This is one of the older houses in Gasconade County. Do any of you recognize this? Do you know, according to this, it was on Corman Road?
Yeah.
What can you tell me about that? I don't know anything other than that.
It's an old rock house. We've taken one end out and store hay in it.
Wow. Do you no idea on the age of it or nothing?
No, but I had never really looked. there's so many rock houses around the area, I didn't know that it had any historic value other than just being a rock house.
Someone said it's the old Mickey House, M-I-C-H-E.
MICHE, slide
Is that
number
right?
14.
That's the oldest name that I know about. And he's, I think, the last man that lived.
Did
So
have
do you
a-
know what time period that would have been possibly? Are you talking the early 1900s or mid to late 1800s? Or
No, it'd be the early 1900s.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Well, that is a site we would be interested in going around, seeing if we could find anything.
And
So often, the front yard, nobody mowed, they didn't mow grass, and everything just got thrown out. And it's just amazing what you find. Just yesterday, I found a silver pocket watch. I mean, there's no insides to it. The bezel's broken out, and part of it's broken off, and it's really smashed and dented in. But silver was a decent metal to use for things like that, and I guess they were just pitched it out in the yard.
they tell me there's 2 Mickeys buried under a cedar tree very close there.
Well, we don't dig graves.
I did more, that's for sure.
I never have, we don't do that. It's just, I have been involved in trying to locate some Civil War graves with ground penetrating radar over around the coal camp area, but we were unsuccessful in that. Another history lost. This is a fella, I called and asked permission to metal detect his farm. He owns 160 acres south of Jeff City. And he lives in Sedalia, and he said, yeah, I guess maybe that'd be all right, but if you want to find gold, come look in my backyard. And I said, well, I can do that when I'm over visiting my mom. My mom lives in Sedalia, and I went over in the fall and detected for a while. I said, well, what do you mean gold in your backyard? And he said, well, in 1978, I was planting saplings, and I lost my wedding ring. And all the saplings died, and he said, it's in an area, it was in an area about probably as wide as this building and about as long. And I walked all through there in the fall and didn't find anything, and then I went back in the spring and got a good signal and popped it up, and I was looking at it, and he was right there with me. He was digging with the spade. And his wife cried, and I get a Christmas card from him every year. You know? He's like, you can detect that farm anytime you want. So, anyway, history lost, another reason we like to detect. History destroyed. This is a Civil War campsite up in Mike's neck of the woods in Fulton. It's a state hospital. There have been bullets and buttons and all kinds of relics that have been found out in these grounds. It was a campsite. What a great place to do an investigation. Even if it's owned by the state of Missouri, which I have to watch what I say because I work for the state of Missouri. But anyway, did they do anything? No. They just wipe it all out and put up some new buildings. Will not. Mike worked for the state as well. Try to get permission to go in and detect. Absolutely not. It just gets destroyed. And I even talked to people in charge at DNR. I worked for DNR, and I went to and asked if we could get someone a position of a detectorist just to go in on these sites preliminarily and just hit it with an archaeologist, a state archaeologist. They got to do like so many hours of work to keep up their certifications and stuff, and sometimes they have trouble. And I said, that would take care of all of the certifications. Absolutely not. We're not going to have any metal detectorists on any of our sites. I said, well, let's do that. There it goes. It's also lost due to pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, waters, some buttons that are losing their gold gilt that was on them, but they're still in great shape. That's an I, an infantry button, an A, an Eagle artillery button from the Civil War. These are becoming more deteriorated just over time. The water, acidic soils, farm machinery, everything, and they just deteriorate. These are 160 years old. Another 100 years. We already dig a lot now that they're just gone. Sometimes all there is the flat back of the button. You just have this little flat back piece in the front of it. You can see the impression in the dirt, but it just deteriorates. It's gone. We go whenever we can and wherever we can. If we can get permissions. Late fall, early spring is best. We do a lot in harvested fields. Less underbrush, fewer ticks, moderate temperatures. Mike and I are in, as you can see, exceptional physical shape, but we do get
I'm not gonna suck at my cup.
we do get tired and worn out pretty easily anymore. This is just, you can't probably even tell what this is the Gasconade River. This is Gasconade County, of course. Mount Sterling's right down here. These are sites where we just knew the Civil War camp was. Mike will talk more about this in a minute. We've been looking all over, having no luck. These are lots of old house sites out here. The names that you may recognize, which I can't, the Pullman Place, Van Ravensway, Linneman Schulte. These may be actually modern homeowner names. Heckman's Mill, Pryor's Mill, that's over on the other side. A few of the finds, just thought you might be interested in seeing that aren't in the cases over there. This is a Centennial suspender clip, says 1776, 1876. These are fairly common apparently. People find these now and again. It's just kind of interesting celebrating the Centennial. This is a Missouri State Guard. It's a Missouri Seal button. It's got the bears on the sides. That was the Missouri State Guard that went with General Price beginning of the war. That was a button from their uniform. This jagged edged thing like a saw edge. It's got a hole in it, and upside down too, and it says the Brayton House. This is from over around Syracuse, Missouri, which is on Highway 50 over towards Sedalia. There was a large camp there, and there was a hotel called the Brayton House. And apparently the soldiers would like to, and travelers would like to keep the key fobs as a memento of where they stayed. So I think this was done to keep you from keeping it, because that'll tear your clothes up. You had that in a pocket or hanging around your neck or something. And it's mentioned in the Civil War records. They say that it was aptly named the Brayton House because the 1,000 mules in the yards would bray every night and keep the soldiers away. They liked to bray at midnight, they said. This is a bullet that's been carved into a top hat. I dug that in Otterville. A bunch of bullets as they came out of the ground on a site, again, over towards Syracuse, Tipton area. And these two bullets have been carved into. So this was pretty interesting. These came out of one hole, but there were more bullets I found just kind of in an area about as big as just that little kind of corner of the room. And they're carved with the initials HS. There's two bullets, but this is rotated so you can see. HS 817. This one is 5/4/1918. So I think what happened was these bullets were dropped in the Civil War in the 1800s. Someone with the initials HS found them, maybe plowing or planting or something, and carved their initials in it in the early 1900s, 1918, lost it, and then I dug it up in 2015. So that little piece of Civil War history has bounced through those centuries. I just thought that was pretty interesting and just neat. Now I can't say for sure that's why those are dates, 1918, but it doesn't correspond to regimental numbers or anything like that we can find. And where I found them on an 1877 plat map, that farm, the initials, it's such a small little spot they didn't spell out the name. It just says E.S. So I'm wondering if HS wasn't the son of ES or the daughter of ES or something that found it. Or a little U.S. belt plate that came out of deep underground. This is an unusual bullet called a ringtail Sharps. It was used by the Confederates a lot. They're over there as a case of those. That's my metal detector, one of the ones I use. But not all the stuff is that old that we find. This next slide came from a site near Lincoln, Missouri. And all I can guess is that and the landowner had no idea. But someone must have brought that back from the war, World War II, and it's a sharpshooter's medal from the Tyrol region of, or between Italy, I guess, and Germany, in the northern Italy area, from what I understand. 1944 is what it dates to. Mike's going to start going now. Do you want to talk, Mike? And there's your thing, and I'll just click forward whenever you're ready.
I got to stand up for this joke before. Just so that you understand, one of the reasons why I'm metal detecting Chris is I'm the small one. That doesn't get to happen very often. He laughs because I say that joke every time we do a presentation. I'm going to do just a brief introduction for myself, but talk about the items we find, and then kind of circle back to Gasconade County about the sites that we're looking at in the county Civil War. Now, we talk about Civil War. We detect anything old. I mean, when I first got my detector, I went anywhere. Parks, churches that they let me, schools, wherever. So we detect everything. We kind of got our passion for Civil War sites. So let me talk a little bit. I'm going to sing Chris's praises a little bit after I joke about it, because metal detecting is kind of fun. I mean, I thought it was just standing out in the field. You always see movies where people on the beach, metal detector, and they're always got black socks on, and they got the zinc on their nose and stuff. Every now and then you do some amazing things that happen in metal detecting. We were detecting about 3 years ago, and it was really unbelievably cold May. The wind chill was probably in the high 30s. It was cloudy, it rained. We're out in this big field, and there's a lot of cattle around. And there's this cow, and she's just bawling her mouth completely, and she's pointed towards the creek. And she's just bawling and bawling. We kept looking, and we would detect, and we kind of didn't see anything. I'm detecting, and I see Chris disappear over the creek. I didn't think anything of it. I thought, oh, he's going to go down there and detect. I thought, man, talk to her buddy. I detect for a few minutes, and I turn around, and Chris is walking out there with a calf. Because Mom has probably just given birth recently, and the calf had fallen in and was up to its neck.
Yeah, it was just like that out of the water.
Cold as could be, and I'm sitting there going, great. He's going to have this story to tell everybody. They're going to say, what did you find? I said, I found some bullets. And he goes, I found a calf. Well, of course, he takes the calf out. We alert the farmer. Farmer comes down, tries to feed it, tries to get it on its feet as fast as possible. It keeps falling. It stumbles, it bumbles, Mom's going crazy. Unfortunately, the calf eventually died because it was exposed. I mean, who knows how long it had been in the water. But things like that happen. I was in Rollo once, and this is a sad story too. We pulled up to a place to metal detect, and it's right behind the mobile home park. I get out, all of a sudden these officers come running up to me. That's never a good sign. So I was like, what happened? And they said, have you seen a young woman? And I said, well, it's a mobile home park. They said, no, she's bleeding. She slit her wrists. A young teenage girl had tried to commit suicide. She was running through the park. And so, of course, we ran over, we went over to detect it in the fields, and they said, if you see anybody, let us know. And for a brief second, we thought we saw somebody. So we alerted the police, and they went into the woods. I understand they found the girl, thankfully, and she did recover. And that's how, not because of us. I would like to claim credit for it, but not. But things like that happen that you don't normally think, oh, you're metal detecting. You don't really think those things happen. So we have a little bit of those kind of odd stories. Okay. So let me talk about my history of metal detecting. I've actually been metal detecting off and on for about 40 years. When I was a kid, my father used to get Field of Stream, Outdoor Life, magazines like that. And I don't know if you all remember, but there used to be ads in the back of those magazines. And they would always show the same thing. They'd show a couple, they'd have a bed sheet in front of them, and it would be just covered with coins and guns and knives. And they said, you too could find thousands and thousands of coins. And people would say, I found 5,000 coins in my first month. And as a kid, I'm sitting there going, holy cow, there's a fortune out there. So I pestered my parents, and I said, I'd love to have a metal detector. And they go like, yeah, like everything else you have, you'll use it for a couple of days. And we go, no, I swear. So they decided to buy me the cheapest metal detector they could find. I usually bring it. It's about that big. And it was called a Mustang. It had one button on it. And what it did is it said metal. That's all it said. You pass over something, it was metal. So I dug thousands and thousands of nails. I dug washers. I dug everything. You know, I was hoping for anything. I never found a single point. So I said, this is a hoax. This is a hoax. There's nothing out there. So then, around 2000, my mom remarried, and the man was retiring, and he said, you know what, I think I'll take up metal detector. Don't even try. Don't even bother. It's a hoax. So he said, well, I'll get one. So he got a nice detector, and he goes out. First day, finds like a silver dollar. I'm like, I've been lied to all these years. And I said, hey, do you mind if I borrow it? He said, sure. Well, he's never gotten it back. So I started detecting, and you know, at first I detected everything. And then in 2008, through my stepfather, we had a relative who lived down in Tennessee, and she said, hey, have you ever heard of Battle of Shiloh? And of course, anyone knows Civil War, you like start drooling. Battle of Shiloh, oh my gosh, that's amazing. She says, well, I live kind of close to it. If you guys want to come detect my property, you're more welcome to it. Kind of close means she's 2/10 of a mile from the entrance. So we drove down there, and I kept thinking, we're getting awfully close to the park. And sure enough, sweet woman, she said, you can go detect because I'm sure you will find a thing. You can go on the back, but you can't. Well, she owns like 160 acres. So we go out, Tennessee summer, blistering hot, go out in the middle of the woods. I'm out there for a turn on my metal detector, and I'm thinking, no, we're not going to find anything. You know, all those magazines have been lying to me all my life. First 2 minutes, I find a bullet, and I've been hooked ever since. So we're going to talk about some finds a little bit and what we do. It kind of frustrates my mom a lot. I love history, but I'm not big into people history. The history of the land, like Chris was talking about, that's really kind of the big thing for us. We do certainly try to tie the events to people, but the idea that we're walking over land, and I'm going to talk about one kind of moment that kind of got to me a little bit, is what I'm about. And so I'm going to talk about the finds and how they tie to the land. Let me start with this. Chris is the charming one, as you can probably tell. He goes in and he charmed some people. We got to be able to detect Heisinger Bluffs and St. Joseph Bluff in Jefferson City. It sits on, of course, the bluffs overlooking. During the Civil War, that was one of the largest Union camps in Missouri. About 3,000 Union soldiers camped. Now, unfortunately, about 90% of the camp was destroyed when they put the new bridge. They put the highway through. So when you're driving, in fact, that's very common, by the way. It's very, very common, because if you think about it, soldiers wanted to camp where it was the most convenient spot. Where do you put the roads? In the most convenient spot. I have a lot of relatives from Iuka, Mississippi. Huge, very famous battle in Iuka. In the middle of the battlefield, the highway goes through. And in fact, there are like signs right on the edge of the road that says this spot, because it was the most logical place. It's already a road there, first of all. So anyway, we got permission to detect, and it was a really good site. We found a lot of things around there. And one of the things, and I wish I could say I found this. I found something like this. If I showed you the picture I found, you'd be like, you can get out of it. It looks like this, except for it's gray, what I found. Had the same symbols and stuff, but it had been scratched a little bit. And I looked at that and I said, you know what? That looks like something I've seen before, like a state seal. And you know, Chris pointed out Missouri state seal. I looked it up, and this is a Wisconsin state seal hut. So a Wisconsin soldier, most likely, camped somewhere at Heisinger Bluffs and lost a button. You say, okay, big deal. So I thought, well, you know, you can actually trace regiments. During the Civil War, they were raised and they were named after their states. The 1st Missouri, the 8th Wisconsin, which is this one, the 54th Massachusetts, which, you know, we saw the movie Glory on. There's all sorts of things that you can trace them. So I started looking at Wisconsin regiments. And I discovered that a Wisconsin regiment had in fact come through that area. This regiment is known as the 8th Wisconsin. And the reason I mention this is because you find some tiny little item that doesn't seem like it means anything, but it has an amazing story. The 8th Wisconsin Wisconsin was the fightingest regiment out of Wisconsin during the Civil War. They first started in St. Louis, and they participated in the Battle of Fredericktown, then they taken New Madrid. Then towns you may have heard of, so Vicksburg, they fought in, the Red River Campaign, they fought all over. In fact, if you go online, there is what's called the War Eagle Trail, which actually traces them because they were such a fighting unit. They were known for one famous thing. That's Old Abe, their mascot. In the spring of 1861, an Ojibwe Indian by the name of Chief Sky captured a bald eagle. And he captured it near a Union training camp up in Wisconsin. And he approached the soldiers and said, "Hey, would you like to buy my eagle?" So 4 soldiers came together with $2.50 each, and they bought this eagle and named him Old Abe. Old Abe became the mascot throughout the entire Civil War for the Abe, Wisconsin. And he had quite an illustrious career. They first came to St. Louis several months later after they bought Old Abe. Old Abe got loose and started flying around St. Louis. A police officer found the eagle, and already by this time, the Abe, Wisconsin company, they hadn't even fired a shot yet in battle. Had already become famous because of their mascot. So he said, "Oh, this must be Old Abe." So he took him back to Lake Wisconsin. Abe, Wisconsin goes down, fights in the Battle of Fredericktown, goes down, fights in the Battle of New Madrid. Eventually, they get down to Corinth, Mississippi. And the Battle of Corinth, Mississippi was actually at the time one of the bloodiest, nastiest battles of the war. And I got overshadowed by a lot of things afterwards. But this is where Old Abe earned his stripes. Old Abe became kind of well known amongst Union, but also Confederates. The Confederates called him the Yankee Buzzard. And it was the goal of sharpshooters to kill Old Abe. So in the middle of battle, and about 2,500 men, I think, died in this battle. I mean, it was not a small affair. It was a big, bloody battle. The sharpshooter fires once. He hits the tether that was tying Old Abe. They were going to battle with Old Abe on this. This guy here was considered to be the most honorable man of the entire regiment because it was his job to carry Old Abe into battle. And what they would do is they would yank the stick, and Old Abe would squeal and hawk, and he would flap his wings, and it would inspire the men to go on is what it was supposed to. But what happened was, first shot cut the tether. Second shot goes through his wing. Old Abe wasn't having any of that. He takes flight. Now, there was a newspaper man in the room, so I'm not going to say my joke normally about newspaper men. What actually happened was Old Abe takes off and he flies about 50 yards down the line to get out of the line of fire. Reporters, though, seeing a great story, started talking about how Old Abe soared above the Confederate lines and started raining down swaps upon the Confederates, frightening them to death, inspiring the Union soldiers to charge and overtake the Confederate lines. Old Abe became the most famous animal in America at that point. He was on the front page of the New York Times and all of the other newspapers of the day. So they kept him. He then went on to, like I said, the Red River Campaign and a few other battles. Finally, in 1864, in September of 1864, they retired Old Abe. He went back to Wisconsin. But as he's going up to Wisconsin, this was a long story to get to an end. Abe, Wisconsin, was called into service once again. Sterling Price, which you mentioned, was coming through Missouri. The 8th Wisconsin was called up from Vicksburg by steamboat to go to St. Louis and by steamboat to Jefferson City. And if you read, there's one notation that says, "And we camped one night on the bluffs in Jefferson City overlooking the river before we headed out to chase down Price." So for one night, the 8th Wisconsin camped on the bluffs overlooking the Missouri River. And I would love to say that's the fun. After the war, Old Abe did not stop being famous. What they decided to do was the Wisconsin legislature decided to create what they called an Eagle Department. And they created a cage down in the basement for Old Abe. This guy's name is Gillespie, I believe is how it's pronounced. He was the last caretaker for Old Abe. He's a member of the 8th Wisconsin Regiment. Old Abe was taken out around all various festivals and fairs, rallies, things of that nature, the Centennial. He was really quite famous. And it was always told how people would come when they came to the Capitol. They didn't want to meet the governor. They didn't want to meet Old Abe. So it became the most popular, famous, I don't know what you call it, probably the most famous landmark or living animal. Unfortunately, in February of 1881, there was a fire at the state capitol. Now they claim that Old Abe alerted everyone by screaming so loud. What happened, unfortunately, was Old Abe inhaled a lot of smoke. It took him about a month to die, and he died in this man's arms about in March of 1881. Not to be outdone, though, they decided to make a replica of Old Abe, which now sits in the Wisconsin legislature. Now, you think, that's a cool story. But Old Abe is still with us today. He is the 101st Airborne mascot. During World War II, when the 101st Airborne came into being, they were based in Racine, Wisconsin. They were Racine, Wisconsin. You also probably, if there's any old farmers here, would recognize Old Abe. He was the face of Case Agriculture. They retired him, I think, in 1969. So you find this tiny little piece of metal that has a connection to an amazing story. And that's kind of what we're about, is trying to connect and put things in context. Okay, I'll make this one short. This handsome young man is named Guang Su. Why in the world am I showing you a Chinese emperor? Guang Su was the second last emperor of China. He died in 1908 because it looks like his mother poisoned him. She decided she was going to die. They told her she was going to die, and she did not want him to outlive her, so she fed him arsenic, and she died like 1 hour after he died. So that's motherly love for me. So anyway, I found a coin at Heisinger Bluffs. It had an imperial Chinese dragon on it. And I go and I look at the books, and it says it was minted in 1908, the year of this man's death. It is one of his coins. That is the province, the Yunnan province, is where it was minted. Now, as Chris talked about how we don't know things, how did a coin from 1908 that was minted there get to be on the bluffs overlooking the Missouri River in Jefferson City? It has a hole in it. I can only imagine that a sailor or someone like that wore it around their neck as a good luck token or something like that, but I have no idea. And that's the thing. You find stuff and you have no idea. My oldest coin is a 1776 Spanish real. I found it in the middle of the field. Nothing around it. No explanation as to how it came into being or whatever. Next slide, please. Everyone know who this famous gentleman is?
Bloody Bill.
Yes. You're a northerner. To the southerners, he's Captain William Anderson. To the rest of the world, he's Bloody Bill Anderson. We detect, a lot of my focus and Chris's focus on detecting is an area between, say, Union, Sedalia, Paris, and Rock. That's kind of the four corners of what we detect a lot. And we emphasize Civil War. And we're going to talk about Sterling Price when we get to the Gasconade sites, too. But Bloody Bill Anderson had, of course, everyone's very famous with the Centralia Massacre. Well, during that same time, he did something else rather notorious. He burned Danville to the ground. What happened was, during 1864, Bloody Bill and the other bushwhackers were sort of commandeered by Sterling Price to sort of shake things up, throw the Union off my scent, cause a lot of calamity, do everything you can, destroy our railroads, rob banks, do what you can. Now, Price didn't want him to go around massacring people, but he was causing a lot of he's a young man, by the way. I think he's like 23, 24. He's not an old man. But one of the things he did was he met with Price in Boonville, Missouri. And Price said, the Union Army is coming after me. Do something to disrupt them. Burn every bridge you can. So, Bloody Bill goes back, things he did, Centralia Massacre, which, you know, we can talk about that. We talk about that a lot. But what I'm moving on to is Danville. There's not a lot of evidence that he was actually at Danville. People believe he was. The story is that supposedly there was a doctor in Danville who Bloody Bill Anderson had a grudge against. And back in that day, giving a young man an army of a couple of hundred bushwhackers, armed to the teeth, who had already been killing people for years, having a grudge meant, I'm going to go kill you and everyone I can find around you. And so he went to Danville, his army did. At least Archie Clement, his second in command. If you ever read about Archie Clement, everyone agrees, was mentally deranged. He loved to kill, and it didn't really matter what. He loved to kill. They went to Danville, and you can read the accounts, but we detected Danville quite a lot. In fact, there's a big display case if you go to the Sinclair station in Danville, Red's Sinclair station, that we built for him, that has all of the artifacts that we found on his property behind the Sinclair station, other places. But what they describe is that Bloody Bill Anderson's soldiers went to Danville basically to burn it to the ground. Only two houses remain. One is the Baker Plantation House, which now, if you go on 70, is surrounded by all the dump trucks and everything. That's kind of what he talks about, the history of the story. I detected that a little bit, didn't get to detect it as much as I wanted to. But the other is there's a white building that sits right almost practically on 70, and that's the female academy. When Bloody Bill Anderson's men came roaring through town, the young ladies went out, and they all decided to work their female charms on the soldiers, and supposedly, they offered him a kiss if he would not burn down the house. And these were very gallantry. It was really weird. They would hang you, they would kill you, they would knife you to death. But if a young lady asked them to do something, they were always willing to do it because they saw themselves as knights. They were the modern day knights of the Civil War. So when the young ladies asked him, I'll give you a kiss if you don't burn down the place. Well, I'd love to, young lady. And so, of course, he did, and they didn't burn down the academy. We're detecting a field, and we started finding all these shot bullets. Just a lot of shot bullets. And this was a part of what would have been Old Town Danville. Well, if you read the accounts, what happened was there weren't a lot of Union soldiers, but when they saw the bushwhackers coming, they got scared. And they ran into the houses of people to hide. And the reason he burned down the town, he set fire to the houses. And they waited till they ran out, and then they gunned them down in the streets. And they killed every Union soldier they found. There were no prisoners. That was his policy. That's why there's the Centralia Massacre. No prisoners. So we're detecting, and suddenly hit me, we're detecting a site where these young Union soldiers are running out of the house scared to death. And those bushwhackers are waiting for them. And they're just gunning them down. And so when you pick up a small little bullet, you think, oh, it's no big deal. You think, this could be the bullet that killed some young soldier who was thinking the war was basically over. Until Price came in, the war was really winding down. And a lot of these young men joined the Union Army because they were drafted, thinking, well, I'm far enough away, I'm not going to get shot. But here they are being gunned down in the streets of Danville. So that's kind of one of the things that we, once in a while, it hits you. The history of the land is what hits me. Next time, please. Okay. Finally, Gasconade. Okay. This is, right in here, is probably about where Mount Sterling is. As you mentioned, Sterling Price. I'm going to do this backwards because there's two sites we're looking for. One's for 1861, one's 1864. The reason we got interested in this was, and of course the lights are off, but this book, An Osage County Civil War Patchwork. I don't know if you're all familiar. Chris didn't mention it, but we started by Osage County approached us and asked us if we would like to do a presentation for them, and we said sure. And they said, well, what we'd like to do is give you a list of sites we would like you to go to. We selected the items we found, we gave it to the Historical Society so that we could display case, and then they said, we'd like you to report on it. So we detected all over the county, all of the towns I had never heard of before. And we gave a presentation about a year and a half ago. And while we're doing that, I kept reading about the Mount Sterling area, and Sterling Price. I don't want to overwhelm people because my girlfriend, she's like, oh, good grief, I'm in a Civil War story. That's usually when she puts on her headphones. Or says, look, a deer, or something, anything to distract me. But in 1864, Civil War is going really bad for the South. Sherman's about ready to take Atlanta. Sheridan's cleaning out the Shenandoah Valley. Grant's got Lee pinned down. It really looks like they're going to lose the war. Everybody realizes it. But they have one hope: the election in 1864. If Lincoln loses, McClellan, the former general, wins, the hope is the Confederacy has a new birth, a new life. Because McClellan was in the war, possibly even reaching terms with the Confederacy. So they thought, what can we do? Is there anything we can do to hurt Lincoln's chances? And they came up with this daring plan. The quietest sector of the war at that time was Missouri, which had been a really hotbed for the war, but it was really quiet in 1864. So Sterling Price, former governor of Missouri, Mexican War hero, probably one of the most famous Missourians, they picked him to lead a charge, an invasion into Missouri, 15,000 mounted men to take St. Louis, if not that, take the capital, and make and shame Lincoln. And maybe people will think, oh, good grief, this war's never going to end, we're going to vote Lincoln out. And draw away federal troops who are reinforcing Sherman and Grant. And they thought, if you could do that and bring us supplies, raid Missouri, take everything you can, then maybe this will be a successful campaign. It actually turned out to be the largest cavalry campaign of the entire war. It was huge. And it was actually one of the longest campaigns in terms of miles. Because he starts in Pocahontas, Arkansas, goes all the way up to south of St. Louis, comes across Missouri. They had this huge battle in Kansas City called the Battle of Westport. Goes down through Kansas, down through Mine Creek, goes down a little bit through Arkansas, back into Missouri, goes all the way down to Texas. It's a long campaign. It takes over a month. So for a brief period of time, Gasconade County was on the map. Because Price goes to St. Louis, he realizes he can't take St. Louis. Second objective, Jefferson City. So they stopped in Union for a couple of days to reconnoiter, get ready, and then they decide we're going to drive to Jefferson City. So they come through in early October of 1864 through Gasconade County. Price had 3 divisions. That is, he had 3 commanders, each commanding about 4,000 to 5,000 troops. One division under Marmaduke goes and captures Herman. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that, with the famous cannon and everything. You know the history better than I do. The other two divisions under Fagan and Shelby go south, and they go towards Mount Sterling, like you mentioned, Bay. And remember, we're talking about a small town. I mean, I live in Fulton. So what we're talking about more troops than our citizens in Fulton. Plus, everyone's got a horse. So you're talking anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 men and 5,000 to 10,000 horses. They got to eat. And they're looking for supplies. So every horse, every flour, pigs, corn, chickens, everything you can think of, they're taking. And they've got wagons to fill. So they're even looking for cloth. They're looking, of course, if you've got gold or silver. And of course, you all know better than I do, very strong pro-Union county. They hate this county. In fact, when we were doing some research for this speaking, one of the things I noticed was you had a provost marshal in Parliament during the Civil War who was very strong Union, obviously, but a lot of escaped slaves from southern Montgomery County and Callaway County, my county, came to Gasconade because the provost marshal would tell slave catchers, I'm not helping you and you're not going to find these slaves. So it became a haven. And that just infuriated these Southerners because they're fighting a losing cause by this time. They kind of know they didn't take St. Louis and there's a lot more Union soldiers than that. So they came early October of 1864 to Mount Sterling. You probably all know the story better than I do, but what it says is the actual first-hand accounts are there's only just a few lines. One, it had been raining a few days before. It had been dry been raining a few days before they got to Mount Sterling. Rivers are rising. And this area over here, they describe as unfathomable mud. That's the best description you get of the Mount Sterling area, unfathomable mud. Because what happened is one division, 4,000 to 5,000 men, crossed the river and camped on the west side, 4,000 to 5,000 men camped on the east side. We think, because it's mentioned in quite a few stories about Gasconade farm that's up here, that supposedly they camped near that farm. And they raided all of the mills, Heckman's Mill, Pryor's Mill, all the mills you mentioned, because not only were they looking for food, they were looking for mills as well. Any place they could go. The Leach's Mill down farther south, I think, as well. So they stayed for about a night. But you got to imagine 8,000 men and horses one night, and they're like a ravenous animal. They're spreading out over the countryside. They're bringing things constantly back into camp. The story is they went up to Heckman's Mill and they had to drive a wagon full of ground flour and things like that back to the camp. They're constantly bringing it. I mean, it's a thriving town. It's a town on the move. Marmaduke, of course, takes Herman. Then he goes to the Gasconade Railroad Bridge, drives off the Union soldiers. He comes down. He comes to Mount Sterling. Now, he just kind of marches straight through. So you had at one time all of Sterling Price's army, which is one of the most well-covered armies at its time, marching through Mount Sterling. And we're trying to find, and I will tell you, because Chris this, we've detected a lot of places, and you would think we would find a town. And we have yet to find it. And we found a few shot bullets here and there, but you know, when you're talking 10 to 15,000, maybe more men, we were surprised. Now there's a place called Rebel Ford on the Gasconade, which everyone is familiar, and Chris actually has it in his first slide on his presentation, a citation that was in the, was that the Republican? Gasconade County Republican. And when we talk, Ed has been great. I mean, Ed's been fantastic about helping us with trying to find it. But you'd think we would find it. I mean, it's kind of hard to hide again. So that's the first place we're looking. The second place we're looking is everyone familiar with Joseph Alpheus Matthews? So if you have not. One of the things that, you know, when we do a lot of research, we type in names on the internet and kind of see what comes up. So I found a newspaper article that talked a little bit about camps here in Gasconade County. And one of the things it mentioned was that there was a recruiting camp in Canaan during the war. In 1861, when the Confederates are trying to take over the state, they formed what was known as the State Guard. The Union side formed what was known as the Home Guards. And so every county was required to raise a certain number of troops to fight for the Union cause. In Gasconade County, one of those men was Joseph Alpheus Matthews, who was a county judge at the time, and was a very prominent citizen. And so what I read was that through his own money, he basically equipped and outfitted a group of men. And that they had a camp. Some say it was named Camp Matthews. I guess if you pay for it, you can name it after yourself. But he founded a camp called Camp Matthews, and it said it was on the Douglas Prairie near the Canaan post office. And so I know a couple people from Owensville, so I've called them and I've asked them for help to track this down. We've started kind of looking at the records. There's not a lot of really good records as to where Camp Matthews were, but it says that he erected barricades to prevent the Confederates from overrunning his camp, and that there were a couple of skirmishes there, and that a few men did in fact die. Now, you think, okay, that sounds good, but this will just kind of go to show you how I love the history of land. You all made the front page of the New York Times on October 16, 1861. You know, when you type in, you never know what you're going to find. You know, I found this at the State Archives. The story is the alarm about the rebels in rear of Fremont. John Fremont was the savior of the day, probably one of the most famous Missouri, but he was also probably one of the most famous people in the United States at the time. He was appointed to command all Union soldiers in Missouri. He decided, reluctantly, he decided I'm going to go after the Confederates and chase them all the way down to the southwest part of the state. At one time, he had about 38,000 men in his command, the largest army in U.S. history up to that time. But one of the things he was afraid of, because he was kind of skittish, was he was afraid the Confederates were going to mount an attack on his rear. And so, it says here, the Union men in arms between him, Fremont, and Herman are a body of home guards under the command of Judge Matthews. Judge Matthews is an old resident of Gasconade County, is now county judge, and is a man of considerable property influence. He has with him 6 companies, all raised in Gasconade, and comprising some 500 men. His headquarters are Douglas Prairie in the south part of Gasconade County. So he made the front page of the New York Times, or Douglas Prairie made the front page of the New York Times. So obviously he had 500 men. He was there for a couple of months. He was sent to Chamois for a while there was some concern about rebels. I'm from Callaway County, very pro-Southern county, and they're in the Civil War. That's why it's the Kingdom of Callaway. It was part of Little Dixie. Southern Montgomery County, very pro-Southern. And then you got Gasconade County, German. And that's, and that's why, when you read about Gasconade County, there's not a lot of major battles in there, but there are a lot of bushwhackers coming in and killing Germans because they hated Germans during the war. So that's one of the places that we're looking for, is we're looking to see if we can find where Camp Matthews was, where was the barricade, and kind of track him a little bit. Okay, so very last.
You have a question over here?
Yes, please.
We have a marker at Camp Matthews.
They have a marker. This is why we put the cart before the horse. We should have been talking.
Yeah, no, the Historical Society has a marker there, Jerry. It's right there on 28. There's an old church there.
Okay.
What's the name of that old church?
Liberty Baptist.
Yes, Liberty Baptist. That's where Camp Matthews is.
I will tell you, and this is why, we move sometimes. I went on, there's a Civil War recruit called Wallace, which supposedly is the end all for things, and they said Camp Matthews. No one knows where it is. We can't find it, so, okay. Don't trust Wallace. Okay, where is your...
Actually, that's way better than the other. We don't know where it is.
No,
It's way better.
and I appreciate that very much because that's the kind of thing. I mean, when we started looking, and that's the first 2 that we're looking at. So there's about 6 or 7 other camps that we're looking at. Gasconade County. 1861, there was a lot of recruiting camps all over this county because this county did a really good job of raising troops for the Union Army. And then in 1864, there were a lot of activity. So, yeah.
There was a skirmish also, Price's men at Old Bullock, and that's when Wilhelm Diebel was shot by Price's men, and there's a marker there also.
And this is why we come to speak to people. So this is our pleasure. Make sure we know what we're talking about. No, I appreciate that very, very much, seriously.
Well, we wanted to get to the museum in Owensville. We wanted to get to the research center at Permanent. We just have not been able to yet. It's jobs really getting away of a lot of this.
It's a really big job, girlfriends, I'll tell you, man. Well, and I appreciate that. Well, obviously, we talked to you a lot. The very last thing I wanted to leave was on a big note. One of the good things that we've done over the years is we've actually detected a lot of famous homes. We got to do the Hockaday House in Fulton, which is a very cool place to detect. The McClay House in Tipton, which I thought was really cool. And then we got to detect in, the Dooley House in Jefferson City, the one that sits up on the hill. As you drive in on 54, it sits up on the hill and it's lighted at night. We detected that quite a lot and found there we found Civil War items. The other homes were kind of well picked over. But we got to detect Butch Patrick's home. Anyone know who Butch Patrick is? Go ahead, sing it out.
He's a little monster.
Give the man a star. We got to detect Eddie Munster's house. Eddie Munster lives in Macon. He actually, and super cool, it's a family, it's where his family's from. He has a home, a really nice home up in Macon. It's a very old, 125-year-old home. And he travels around the country. He has the original Batmobile and the Crypt Keeper vehicle that they had on the Munster show. He goes to shows and things like that. Macon's his home base. So we didn't get to meet him. He was actually at a tour on it. But we got to detect his home. The only thing I found was a rabies tag from 1947. But that's my prize item. I go, this is Eddie Munster's rabies tag. So anyway, I just want to leave on that note. But thank